Welcome to the Garden of Edun. Dami be asking the questions for the answers that you want to hear. All you gotta do is sit back, grab a chair, or listen up while you clean and cook. Take a leaf from the creative's book. These gems open your mind and your heart. Okay, the show's gonna start. Cheese! Welcome back to the Garden of Edun podcast, everyone, where ideas grow. I'm your host, Dami Edun, and today we've got a very interesting episode. Now, usually I've got, creatives on the podcast, people who are working on creative things like musicians or authors or journalists. But today we've got our first entrepreneur on the podcast. So please welcome Peju to the podcast. Peju, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited that I'm the first.
Yeah. I mean, when I discovered your profile and saw you were running, multiple businesses and you'd had multiple ventures, I thought you'd be a really interesting person to talk to because most people are struggling to, run or start one business, let alone multiple. So I'm sure you've got a lot of wisdom to share to share to the people listening to today.
I hope so.
No, I'm sure you do, man. I'm sure you got a lot of lessons and gems. It's my job to bring them out of you, innit? So hopefully,
All right, then, let's
I've
do
got
it.
the right questions for you. So Peju is the founder of Symmetry Beauty, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a bridal makeup, hair, wig service. Please step in if I'm bastardizing your thing. Please do.
So it is essentially a beauty company that specializes in hair and makeup. So we do bridal hair and makeup. So you're right in that regard. But we also do wigs and weaves and hair coloring and makeup for like birthdays, special events, special occasions.
Brilliant. And you're also the co-founder of Evented Ltd and Treats et al. And you're also an author, so the author of a book, Journey to Forever. So you're doing a lot, Peju. You're doing a lot.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, no, it's sick. It's sick. But before we go into depth on the things that you're doing now, I'd really like to start off with the early days, because I guess the early days is what informs where we move as humans throughout our lives. And just to give a bit of perspective, for me, growing up, I wasn't very like outwardly creative as I am now, and it was something that I had to discover years later. So one of the stories I've told quite a few times on the pod is what got me inspired to start writing the book that I'm writing at the moment is I was cleaning up my room at, I think I was probably in my early 20s, like 23, 24. And I was cleaning my bedroom at home. And I found all these old, like, books that had, like, writing in them. Probably really bad handwriting because I was, like, 5, 6, 7 years old. And I'd written loads of these different, like, fictional stories. So I was reading through it like, wow, I used to really love writing, and I must have just forgotten as I'd gotten older. And one of the things I realized was that I hadn't finished any of the stories. So I said to myself, I'm gonna try and do that now and try and fulfill that, I guess, that childhood passion. So for you growing up, Peju, were you that kid that was like selling sweets or selling stuff on the playground? Or was your passion for entrepreneurship found later in your life, and what inspired you to get started in that lane?
It's interesting though, because I do think or me identifying that it was an entrepreneurial spirit, should I say, that I had, was discovered a bit later on, but in my teen years actually. But childhood wise, I was just someone who I always got things done. Like at such a young age, like I would I could manage anything and anybody. And, you know, people used to call me bossy all the time. People would be older than me and I'd be telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I just like to get things done. And so as I grew older, to be fair, I thought it was my love for money that got me into business, but it really wasn't. Honestly, because initially I thought it was because I like to make money. And so even in terms of
Who
like Symmetry,
doesn't? Who
yeah,
doesn't?
but like but
Did,
money doesn't sustain these things. So I realized that although money is what got me into it initially, it's not what actually got me to start the business, if that makes sense. It got me into the industry
right. Yeah.
because I mean, I'd known how to do hair from young because I've got two sisters. And so I just
Right.
enjoyed it. So I just used to practice on them. And then I got to age 14 and I wanted to make money. Like I was tired of relying on my parents for like an allowance. It wasn't enough for me anymore.
Mm.
And so I, you know, if you're familiar with East London, I went to Upton Park and there's loads of hairdressers there. And in the
Yeah,
summer when I
yeah.
was 14, because you're not allowed to get a job until you're 16, innit? So I was like, okay, you know, I could do hair. Like, who's going to give me a job? And someone did give me a job. And that's how it kind of started.
Mm.
And then in terms of then setting up shop, I think I was 17 when I started Symmetry, yeah. And I was doing A levels, and my mum was like, okay, it's enough now. Like, you need to focus on school, like, no more working.
Oh, so your
Yeah, yeah,
parents
yeah.
tried to like
So
pause
she was
your
like,
business activity.
just like, literally just for now, like, because obviously A levels were hard, like, focus on this. But
Mm.
I was just like, you know what? I don't have to work for somebody. If I work for myself, I can dictate the hours. So I can study in, you know, this time. I can, you know, book an appointment in this time. And that's how I started it, honestly. And, you
Yeah.
know, the money was too good for me to let it go. So,
Okay, so that's how you got it. That's how you got started.
yeah.
And with with that specific, like, with the business model, what was the, like, when you started, how did you first like start building up like the client base? What were the steps you took initially
So it started
when
off
you?
with friends and family. And, you know, they already knew I could do it because when I was in school, I used to do my friend's hair, you know, like secondary school.
Mm,
Um, you know, so it was kind of it was word of mouth because back then there was no Instagram. There was Facebook. So I did start promoting on Facebook.
yeah,
Um, and then a lot of it was word of mouth, like someone's, you know, maybe my mum's friend or like my friend or my friend's friend. And you know, obviously I was cheaper than the salons because I didn't have overheads like they did.
of course,
And
yeah.
then when I wanted to like expand, I, you know, started posting on Facebook. And I started at 17. I went to uni at 18. So when I went to uni, I went to Leicester. So it was outside of London. So I
Mm,
knew that there weren't that many black hairdressers out there. So I actually decided to like make business cards. I was handing them out during
yeah.
Freshers Week. And so that's also how I got clients while I was in uni.
Oh, so you
Um,
capitalized on the niche market
yeah,
up in Leicester. Yeah,
yeah.
nice. No, that's really good to hear about the beginnings, especially obviously because now I guess is a lot easier to start a business. Like you said, there was no social media, the
Literally,
internet
there was
hadn't
no, yeah.
matured to the
Hmm.
level that it has today. So
Yeah.
the thought of starting a business was probably harder then because it didn't seem as accessible.
But you know what's funny? It was harder to start a business back then, but I didn't really think of it as like a proper business in that point, in that at that time. It wasn't
Yeah.
until after uni I actually decided. I didn't create a business plan until after uni and put a whole business module
Uh,
together. I think for me, I was just doing something that I enjoyed and making money off of it. That was what it was initially. So even like, oh, I was like, oh, I've got to think of a name. Like, okay, you know. So I even rebranded
yeah.
after uni. Um, but I think at that time I just wanted to do something that I loved, and hey, I get paid.
Hey there, Garden of Edun podcast listeners. Sorry to interrupt this episode. I just wanted to say thank you for watching and listening. If you get value from this podcast, from the guests sharing their perspectives on their journeys, I would appreciate if you could share this with maybe one or two people that you know will get something out of it. If you like the podcast, please subscribe or follow it on whichever audio platform you're listening to it on. We've got more exciting content coming up with athletes, musicians, comedians, journalists, sharing their journeys towards mastery. And now back to the show. Yeah, yeah. What would you say the lessons that you learned in that? I guess because it was, I guess you could class it as like the startup phase, right? Where things were a little bit messy, like there's no process, there's no structure, but you kind of make it work in some way. What would you say were the biggest takeaways you had in that for, I guess, 3 years, if you're at uni for 3 years, or 4 years where you'd started and things were, you hadn't even defined a business plan? What were the things that you picked up, just like the I guess the skills that you picked up in the trenches?
So I guess one of them was working on on fear, in terms of just doing it. You know, I said to you that in Freshers Week I was handing out business cards. I was never the person that would just go up to people. People used to call me Stush because I'm a nice person and I'm friendly, but until when I know you in it, do you know what I mean? But I'd had to like put on like that hat on and say, okay, I'm about to sell myself and my brand and speak to girls that I don't know, you know, speak to people, sell my business to people, and not let fear hold me back. So I guess, you know, even getting that kind of courage and boldness to do that. I think one big thing, like I said, is that I initially thought it was money that kind of motivated me to start a business. But even in that period, I realized that that wasn't enough to sustain me. Like I had to enjoy what I was doing in order for me to continue. Because running a business while studying, I studied law, and that in itself was very, very time consuming. You know, I'd had to take some time off, like around exam time, and I won't take any bookings and things like that. But being able to keep it going while, you know, following studying, it wasn't an easy ride. So I would say, you know, and then perseverance, it really taught me to just keep pushing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hear the perseverance aspect, because especially doing law, which is such an intensive degree on its own, like just doing that on its own is a lot. And like having to like managing a business on the side is also a lot anyway. Combining the two is mad. But I guess you got to have perseverance, because there were probably a lot of times where you're thinking, you know what, I could just quit this. Or did you?
Not in the beginning stages, but a few years ago, I did almost quit. It kind of got to a point where I felt like the business was stagnant. So it was growing, 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 and then it stopped growing. And then for me, I feel like if something's not growing, then it's regressing. And because it had gotten to the point where the focus was a lot on business, I did speak to a mentor who's in my industry, who's obviously years ahead of me, about it when I was going through the phase of, you know, do I quit this business? Because obviously I have two other businesses that are pulling me in different directions. So where this one isn't really growing and it's taking a lot of my time, I'm like, well, is it still worth my while? And so, you know, I kind of had to speak to her and gauge her perspective. And she said, to be honest with you, a lot of us do go through these type of phases. But for what she advised me to do was to actually go back to why I started, you know, reignite that passion and then take it from there. And so that's what I had to do. So, you know, in that time, I invested, you know, a good amount of money on doing courses to expand my skills, to find that love for hair again. So, you know, styling hair a certain type of way. Because the thing is, I never thought I was a creative person, for example, but when you style hair, especially bridal hair, you realize that you're creating something out of nothing. And it's the same with makeup as well. So where I was
True.
then, just allowed to just create, um, I then reignited that passion, and I was like, okay, let's sit down, strategize. And I knew that the bouncing back wasn't just going to be instant, it was going to be a process. Um, and so that's how I was able to get back into, okay, let's focus on this, let's do this and do this properly. And
Yeah.
thankfully, it's been an upward train since then. But these things do happen. Like, I don't want people to think that entrepreneurship is always like an uphill journey. You do
Mm.
have your highs and your lows. And it's just about whether you can keep pushing or not.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that bit you mentioned about investing in your skill set that was to do
Yeah,
with the product that you were delivering. Because I
yeah,
guess a lot of people um, would take on different routes, like maybe bring in someone else to help them out because they've lost the strength to keep going in the same capacity.
yeah,
But for you to double down is sick, and that might actually help someone,
yeah.
investing in their in the actual like skill set
Mhm.
of like the service that you're delivering.
Yeah,
Um, and the thing you mentioned on passion, actually, because it's quite common in um like business advice that I see out there on the internet. I could be wrong, but I usually see one or the other where people are saying you either create a business based on passion or you build it based on utility, based on like evergreen industries in the world.
yeah.
Um, so I was curious actually before you went into the piece about being passionate about the work, about the business that you have. Um, about deciding on being very present in the wedding industry. So did that also grow from your passion for like weddings, or was that more based on like the evergreen nature of weddings? Because I mean, at least in this generation, there's probably still weddings are probably still gonna still be had by the majority. Maybe future
Yeah,
generations are gonna be completely different, at least in the Western world anyway. But at least for now, it looks like it's still an industry that's going to be here and going to be
definitely.
needed for millions of people. Which of those reasons was it appealing to you, and what do you think of that advice, like passion versus utility, when starting a
I
business?
think I think I agree that it should be, one or the other. I think for me, it's always been passion, because I am a passionate person. So that's probably why sometimes when I speak with so much passion. But
Yeah.
so with regards to like going into the events industry, um, it didn't start off with planning weddings. It started off with planning events.
Ah,
And
right.
and and the it came out of, I told you I just always get things done. I'm a very organized person, but also
Mm,
I enjoy it. I enjoy putting things together. I enjoy, starting something from scratch and seeing the end result. You put a birthday party together, someone just comes to you with an idea, and
yeah.
you are able to see it through, put all the work behind the scenes, and then you see it come to life. And it's the same with a wedding. Someone's got their special day, and they tell you what their vision is, and you go on this journey with them, and you're able to create something beautiful and memorable for people. So it's one of those
Mm,
things where it's like, I don't know, in 50 years, maybe people won't want to do weddings, but people are still going to want to celebrate special occasions. And
of
it's
course.
always about that. You want to celebrate the launch of a business, you want to celebrate the launch of a book, um, you want to do a fashion show, whatever it is, it's about bringing that idea to life. So even with my business, where we do bridal hair and makeup, it's not just for weddings, it's for special occasions. I actually started with prom because
Ah,
I was
okay,
around that
yeah.
age. Yeah. So it's evolved and developed over time to, weddings, because being a part of someone's big day, special day, is such an intimate time, and it's very precious, and I really do hold it very dearly. But
Yeah, a
you know,
lot of
seeing
pressure as well.
someone,
I imagine a lot of pressure when
it is, but
the what's it?
the
The brides
bride.
are like, yo, this has to bang the exact way I want it to, because
But you know
if
what it
not,
is? I honestly, I love my brides because they genuinely trust me. And so, you know,
mm,
when they, because you have to trust someone to be able to actually put this in their hands, isn't it? And when they
yeah,
see how they look at the end, and they look so amazing, and they're so happy, and it's exactly what they wanted and more. It even makes you feel super fulfilled. Like, I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this
mm,
and I'm impacting someone's life in some way. So honestly, it has stemmed from a place of passion. But I do think, you know, utility also has a part to play in this, because, you know, people do need events and occasions and times to celebrate.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I see the evergreen nature in that, actually, like the events
Yeah.
aspect of the business that you have, and yeah, it's just interesting for me because I always think that for me personally, I feel like the passion mainly needs to be there because, you know, like you were mentioning earlier, you had a really like you had a period where things were a bit stagnant and you felt like you wanted to quit, and it was the passion that brought you back in and gave you like um a boost to I guess get what you got out of it before you had that dip. And yeah, I think that's just necessary to sustain in those difficult times, because I guess if it's just utility, when things get hard, it's probably easy to just be like, you know what, just gonna pack it in. This
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
no point continuing. So yeah, I'm on the same page with that. Um, so another question that I have out of curiosity from my own experience, because I've dabbled in entrepreneurship myself. I would say
Okay.
I'm probably not. It's probably not the lane for me. In upon reflection, at least not now in this stage of my life. I think I'm just yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of it's a lot of like getting shit done and doing it in good time is probably a little bit hard for me at this stage.
Mm.
Maybe one day. But one thing I do remember from my little stint is that it's very easy to just do busy work while you're trying to build something entrepreneurial. So, what are the main activities that you do on a daily or on a regular basis that you focus on so that you're generating revenue for the long term and not just doing work for the sake of being busy?
So the thing about business, when you there's working on the business and there's working in the business. And some entrepreneurs or some business owners, they work on the business, they don't work in the business. But for me, I do both. I work. So when I say work on the business, that's, you know, the strategy, the
Mm.
structure, um, you know, how do we want to grow? How do we want to expand? You know, hiring staff, training staff, things like that. Um, Even to the point where, you know, not too long ago, I took over my website and redeveloped it all myself, because
Oh, wow.
we just
Wow.
weren't doing what I needed them to do. So, you know, things like that take a lot of time,
Yeah.
because it's one thing to also come up with a strategy or a structure, but it's another thing to implement it. So these do take time. And then you have working in the business, which is, you know, obviously planning the events, running the events, the admin for the events, or, you know, if it's
Mm.
hair, actually doing makeup, actually styling the bride, actually making the wig, responding to emails. I do need an administrator though, because it's getting a bit much. Responding to emails,
People,
planning the
Peju's
calendar.
hiring. Get into her DM. She's
I am.
hiring.
I'm hiring for all all roles: hairstyling, makeup, event assistant, admin assistant, whatever. I'm hiring because I need help. But essentially, um, it can be a lot, and sometimes you can find
Mm.
yourself doing so much, but there's not much productivity. And so what I try to
Yeah.
do is plan. Like I plan to the T. Like when I tell my friends, like I plan before we go out. There's hardly any spontaneous outings that I have these days. If it is, it's fantastic and we'll do it. But
Yeah.
like, everything's in my diary. And so when I say I'm planning to ensure that I'm not just doing things to be busy, but also to be productive, what I do is, and this is how the working in the business and on the business come into play. What I do is I have a plan for the year. So I have the goals, and then I put a strategy in place, and then I set an action plan. How am I going to achieve these goals?
Yeah.
And then I break it down. So I have it for the year, and then I break it down into quarters. And so I say, in Q1, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to be able to achieve this, to then be able to make it to this end goal. Obviously, my business is also, they have peak seasons and they have, not so busy seasons. So again, you have to be really strategic with that. And then when I break down my goals to quarters, based on that, what am I doing this month? On a month-to-month basis, what am I actually going to do this month? So in terms of, the bookings that I'm taking, in terms of the, what's it called? The actual strategic plans that I'm putting in place, the marketing that I'm going to do, or, the promo videos or the photo shoots, whatever it is that I'm going to do. And then I have my weekly to-dos. So, some people might think it's a bit excessive, but this is what I've had to create to make sure that my weeks, my days are productive. I also actually plan my rest days and my holidays.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Because
All ahead of schedule, right? Like,
no,
let's
no,
say a
no, no,
year
no,
ahead
no,
of
no,
time, or
no, not a year ahead, like for the month, innit?
oh, okay, for them. Okay, yeah, sure,
But
okay.
because I've had burnout seasons as well, where I've literally burnt out because I was doing so much and I couldn't do anything because I was burnt out. So, but essentially, what I make sure I do is try not to just do things based on activity, and actually be productive and proactive as well. Because a lot of the time when you're in a business, things happen, like you're trying to troubleshoot things, you're always reacting to things, and it can take you off course. And then you realize, oh, hold on a minute, this whole quarter, what have we actually achieved as a business? We've just been reacting, or just working in the business as opposed to on the business. But I do have a YouTube channel called Navigating Entrepreneurship, and it's also like on Spotify and Apple. And I have an
Jeez, little
episode
plug.
where I kind of, listen.
Come on, this is the platform for it. Plug yourself.
It's all about entrepreneurship. So it's for entrepreneurs, and because I've been in business for over 10 years now. It's about the things that I've learned, but also I speak to other entrepreneurs. So similar to you, how you speak to people and understand this. So I speak to other entrepreneurs about specific topics in areas that they're experts in. So I do have an episode where I kind of spoke about like strategic planning and goal setting. It's helped me for the last 2-3 years. It was a business strategist that actually told me about it. And so, I swear by it, I've lived by it. And so anyone that wants to try it, please go ahead and do so and let me know how it goes.
Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something that I wasn't practicing in my days of dabbling. So I think maybe I should have bucked off on your YouTube video before I even tried to start. But no, in all seriousness, I can see how that works, because I guess you basically have like your bigger goals and the activity you need to do to achieve them, and then you chunk it down into smaller bits so that it then like can be dispersed amongst your days, weeks, months.
Yeah. And it makes those goals seem less scary, because sometimes you set goals and you're like, how in the world am I going to achieve this? But if you actually broke it down, you'll see that it's actually achievable.
Curious though, how did you respond when the pandemic hit? Because obviously, if you're planning to that degree and something of that nature hits, it must be like I mean, for everyone, it was very unsettling. But when you're structure is so set in place and so like well planned. How did you respond?
So I should have put a caveat. As much as I'm very structured and I'm a planner, when you do event planning, you know that you have to be willing to adapt to any situation and circumstance that comes your way, because things don't always go according to plan. Funny enough, the pandemic was a blessing in disguise for me because I needed that rest. Like, it wasn't great that
Yeah.
I wasn't making money in that time.
Mm,
And thank God I still had a job.
yeah.
But I needed it because it also gave me time to think and plan and strategize. Okay, so I run service-based businesses. How can my businesses still function if I cannot provide these services? So I started thinking about products I can put out. And that's when I wrote my book. I wrote my book in the pandemic. I wrote my book in 3 months in lockdown.
Oh, wow. Wow. 3 months.
Yeah.
Mad. Super quick.
But the thing is, I was writing about an industry that I've been in for so many years. It's a wedding planning book from beginning to end, how to plan your wedding. And I created resources, that people can use, worksheets, things like that. But if the pandemic didn't happen, I wouldn't have even thought to create or write a book.
Yeah, and it's another channel, even if it in itself doesn't make money. Like I think, what do they call those, like loss leaders or something of that nature? It's still a way to bring people closer to like what you're doing in terms of events
Yeah,
and weddings as well.
definitely.
Like it's a really good like product, or how would you say, like a way to like for people to open the door to everything else that you're doing, right?
Absolutely. And the thing is, I'm only one person and I can't plan everybody's event, so I know people in
Mm,
America that have my book, take the book,
yeah,
run with it, plan the wedding of your dreams, or get a planner, but you still have this guide to help you and
yeah.
ease your stress in the process. Um, I don't believe in hoarding knowledge. I believe in sharing knowledge. So I have this information. Why not?
Yeah, man. Free up the knowledge. Free up the knowledge. That's why
I
we've
have to
got these
pay for it though,
podcasts.
because I've had to pay for knowledge, but it's okay.
Yes, it's all right. Make sure you pay the fee on Amazon. No, trying to forge these books through them random websites. Let's pay
No,
the
it's not even
creators,
available
please.
there, boy. Yeah.
um. So moving along. And I think you've alluded to it a little bit early in the podcast, but it would be good to get a like direct perspective on it. And this is about failures, and failures can be really good lessons when developing a skill or in the pursuit of a wider goal or a journey. So, what failures have you had in entrepreneurship that have been, or that have offered you like the most valuable lessons so far, would you say?
That's a really good question. Um, what I would say, I think when I went through that period where my business was regressing,
Mm,
I would say that was a failure in that time. And it really made me realize that I was really letting fear hold me back from doing certain things. And in the grand scheme of things, it's the people who dare to do things, who take
mm,
those steps and leaps of faith, who are not afraid to share what they do, speak to people about what they do, promote themselves,
mm,
and not feel conscious about the fact that you're constantly promoting yourself and putting yourself out there and showing what you do, because you have to believe in yourself,
yeah.
and actually share that with the world. Not everybody is going to be your client, not everybody is going to be your customer, but there are people out there that will be. And so not allowing the fear of, I might not be good enough, or I don't really want them to see me like this, or, I don't really want to portray myself in this light, not allowing that to hold you back. Because honestly, I found that when it came to business, it was people who were constantly plugging themselves, constantly putting themselves out there, constantly taking those steps and making those decisions that,
Mm,
are in those places today.
yeah, it's actually I'd say that's like especially now with social media where it is today, it's a universal fear, right? People
Yeah.
I'm even speaking from a personal place as well. Like, it's very daunting to
Yeah.
put yourself out there constantly and promote yourself because of insecurities, fears, judgments, etc. But as you've alluded to, from freeing yourself from that fear, it's benefited you, right? And you've seen it's benefited other people.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's powerful because there's a lot of people in I guess in the creative world who pour a lot of their I guess their vulnerable side and their vulnerable expression through their art, but because of that are very fearful of sharing
Mhm.
it to the world. So no, it's a good lesson for people to learn. Were there any others that you would say you learned along the way as well that were more, I guess, oriented around like business itself or?
Don't get too comfortable. There are like 10,000 people behind you trying to take your spot.
Mm,
Um, I always say that there's enough room for everybody to win, and I believe that. But I also believe that we shouldn't get complacent
yeah.
because, you know, there's always going to be someone who's more hungry coming
Mm.
behind you, and it could easily overtake you if you get comfortable.
Yeah, you got to look out for the customer in it. You got to make sure they're happy with
And
every interaction they got with you. Is that what you
not
essentially
not
boil it down to?
necessarily that. It's more so be innovative and creative. Think outside the box. Don't get comfortable with how things have always been and expect it to always
Mm,
be like that. Remember I told you I started pre-social media. So a
yeah,
lot of people that started in social media actually have a bit of an advantage than to me because I don't really like social media like that. But
yeah,
I've had to adapt and adjust because that's how people are buying things these days. That's how people are finding brands these days. Social media influencing was never a thing before, but now it is
mm,
like a huge marketing tool. And so, you know, not getting comfortable in the fact that, yeah, I've been getting clients, I do have clients. Um, I don't need to put my business out on social media, and actually realize that times are changing, and you need to adapt, adjust, think creatively as well. How do you set yourself apart from the next person who's doing the exact same thing as you, who's also very skilled? Obviously, nobody's like you. You are unique in who you are, and your clients would always come to
mm,
you. But how do you set yourself apart? That's also a really big thing. Um, I think for me, I'm always just trying to think of what can I do to better myself from how I was yesterday or the day before. And so
mm,
that applies also to my businesses. If I get complacent, because this is why I said that I did the courses as well, and it's actually
mm,
highlighted to me the fact that I should be doing them more regularly and more often because there's so much knowledge out there and so many new things I can learn that I can bring to my business. I can, change things. I can improve, should I say, that's the word I'm looking for. I can improve how I'm doing things, how I'm delivering my service, how I'm styling people's hair, how I'm planning people's events. Um, so yeah.
yeah. It's really, you know what? Yeah, being adaptable is so important. And I guess even I guess it's a big example to use, but you know, you've seen like some humongous businesses that, you know, you would have looked at and thought, yeah, they're never gonna crash. They're never gonna go to
Yeah,
waste. Like,
exactly.
look at like Blockbuster or like a Toys R Us or any of these businesses that didn't adapt. Even because I used to work in the fashion industry, and Topshop, obviously the Arcadia Group, were,
Yeah.
you know, flagship fashion retailer for Britain for 100+ years, and
Yeah.
because they didn't adapt to the internet and, you know, moving things away from stores and online, they got crushed and
Yeah.
finished. So yeah, it's I guess it's a lesson for everyone that you're never too big or you're never too set to not adapt to the changing times, because you'll get
Yeah.
eaten. You'll get eaten up.
Definitely.
Yeah. Um. So I mentioned earlier that I dabbled in a little bit of entrepreneurship. So I tried a business on my own, which was a social media agency. It didn't quite work out. And then I tried to start another business with a co-founder in 2019. Now, I'm not going to say any names or put anyone on blast, but unfortunately that relationship didn't really work out. It started off with a lot of promise, but I think um, as we went along working on the business together, it became very clear that actually we weren't very well aligned. And obviously you have a company with a co-founder that you're running at the moment, and I was curious to find out how you assess potential business partners and what do you look for when establishing that they're the right people, so that, you know, not very long, so that you prevent, you know, a situation where a few months after starting together you're cutting ties. How do you, yeah, how do you navigate that?
That's a really good question. I actually did a whole YouTube video on that as well, with my business partner and also two other guys who are business partners for a really big social enterprise.
Mm,
Um, and one of the big things I would say when it comes to considering business partnership is you have to make sure that you guys share the same vision for the business. Your
mm,
vision has to be aligned. Otherwise, you're not going to be going in the same way. There's going to be a lot of division in the business. The decisions
yeah.
you make are not going to be aligned. You know, it's not going to work. I think another thing for me that's really big is work ethic. Um,
Mm,
I I understand we all have different strengths and weaknesses. We all have areas of strength, and I think it's very important to understand and identify each person's strong suit and work and like kind of play to that. But I think it's also
yeah.
important to identify if this person's work ethic kind of matches you, even if it doesn't match yours, you know that this person is hardworking and they're going to pull their own weight, if that makes sense.
Right.
Obviously, there's going to
Yeah.
be times, everybody goes through times and seasons in their life where they might not necessarily at that point in time be, what's the word I'm looking for? Be able to put 100% at that specific time. But if it's a
Yeah.
regular thing where you're putting 100%, this person's always putting 50, 40, 20, 30, it's not going to
Ooh.
work. And so,
Conflict.
yeah, and it's you're just going to feel like this is a 50-50 partnership, but I'm doing most of the work or the heavy lifting. Like, what part are you actually playing? And there are different ways that you can actually identify people's work ethic. I think
Mm,
in my YouTube video, one of the examples one of the guys used was if you were planning a group holiday, and this
mm.
person in the group chat never really comes forward with ideas or doesn't actually take any responsibility and is just there, like anything you guys say, okay, I'll send you my money, I'll do this, then at least you know that, okay, if you are looking for someone who's going to be proactive, that's not your person. Maybe if you're looking for someone who's going to be able to, you know, bring clients, for example, maybe this person is really good at connecting with people and is very friendly, and that's what you're looking for
Yeah.
in a partner, then that could work. But if that's not what you're looking for in a partner, then it's not going to work. So it's also important. That's why I said identify each other's strengths and know what you're looking
Mm.
for. But my biggest thing is vision. You have to have the same vision, the same goal for that business.
Yeah. You know what? As you were talking about the vision aspect, I was thinking back to my own experience, and I was reflecting on the fact that at the start we had slightly different ways of how we saw I guess, the end goal at the time. And
Yeah,
I guess, yeah, that plays out because then you're starting at different points already. And then you're
yeah,
just, yeah, then I guess the fractures come into the relationship, and then that filters into the work and the energy you're putting in.
yeah,
And then ultimately it's like, yeah, we're not in synergy, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And because how long have you been working with your co-founder for now?
Since 2016, so 6 years.
Wow. Yeah, wow. That's a long time. And the reason I ask that is, has there ever been moments within that business relationship where you've had to, I don't know, renegotiate, or not necessarily renegotiate, but like reestablish the terms between each other and reestablish how you're going to move in your working relationship together, because I guess people do change and things do change over time too, right? So even though at the start you have the same vision and the same work ethic, etc., how has there ever been moments where you've had to like reassess things together, and how do you, yeah, what's that like? How do you manage that to keep the business fruitful?
Yeah, we've definitely had that, where we both kind of got to a point where we wanted to revisit the direction the business was moving in. And we
Mm,
both had slightly different ideas of how we wanted it to be. So we kind of had to speak and discuss on how we're going to do this. So we agreed that, okay, one person will kind of lead on one kind of division of the business, and another
mm,
person do that, so that it's still it's evolving and it's growing as we are also evolving and growing. But we need to make sure that we're on the same page, because what you don't want is for one person to be doing one thing, another person doing another thing, um, and then the
mm.
business is like all over the place. So let's come together, let's find some sort of compromise or a level playing ground, and then figure out how do we maneuver. So coming forward with the ideas of, okay, you oversee this aspect, you oversee this aspect, was kind of our resolution. And I think one thing to just say is that when it comes to business partnerships, communication is very key.
Mm,
And even when there were times where, I wasn't too happy with certain things or the way certain things were being done, or she wasn't too happy, we would talk about it. Like, okay,
yeah.
I don't feel like you did this well. You're doing this as we'd agreed, or I feel like you didn't handle that situation in the best way. I think you should have done this, or you should have spoke to me, or whatever it is. Like, have those conversations. Um, Even if you feel like, okay, the person isn't pulling their weight, have that conversation. You never know, that person could actually be going through something at that point in time. So it could mean that you might just need to step in for a short period, or maybe that person's been slacking and they need to be told, and they need a little kick up the
Mm,
backside to pick up the pace. But yeah, it's very
yeah.
important to communicate.
Yeah. I've realized, like in my professional career, as time's gone on and I've watched people in higher positions, and seeing like what the differences are at that level, it seems to me that the higher up you go, the more effective your communication has to be, because there's so many moving parts that you can't actually like oversee as an individual. So
Yeah.
for things to be as aligned as possible, your communication needs to be on point. And I guess, yeah, when you're working with someone on a business at that level where you're both managing so many things, if communication isn't on point, then yeah, things can break down pretty quickly, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be willing to have difficult conversations.
Mm, definitely. So you mentioned earlier about mentorship, and obviously it's generally well known that mentorship, it can be quite valuable. For myself at the moment, I wouldn't say I have a mentor. I just like watch certain people online. So like the Gary V's or like Jay Shetty or these kind of people. I'll tune into their content and kind of take that as a form of mentorship. And I know you mentioned when you were in a difficult period, you had a mentor that rekindled your or helped you find a way to rekindle your passion um within your business. So have you had any other mentors that have helped you significantly in your journey as an entrepreneur, and what were the like valuable things you learned from them? How did you access them? I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure anybody who's listening who is thinking of trying to get a mentor would love to hear that too.
So to be honest with you, most of my mentors, I've never met them.
Okay.
I, similar to you, have a lot of people that I watch from afar, read their books, listen to watch their videos, follow them on social media, see how they do things, how they run things, try to learn from other people,
Mm,
sign up to whatever workshops or it is that they're doing. And then I do have a business mentor who she became my mentor in the pandemic, actually.
right.
And, I'd speak to her about my goals for my business, and she would like speak to me about, you know, things that I probably wouldn't have even thought about and how to kind of go about that or focus on this. Or, it's good to have someone who's further along the journey than you are and has more experience than you are, who can advise you and guide you and even make you see things from a different perspective or think about things that you normally wouldn't have thought about. um
Mm,
Another, and like I do really believe that books are a really, really great tool, and I've learned
yeah.
so much just by reading books. Another key thing for me is I have a lot of horizontal relationships, in the sense that I have a lot of relationships with other entrepreneurs. And so,
Mm,
we might
yeah.
have been in business for around the same time, or they might have even been in business for less than I have, but there's still so much I can learn from them, or even
Yeah.
bounce ideas off of them. Or if I'm feeling deflated, it's easier to talk to someone who is going through something similar to you or has been through that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's great to have the vertical relationships with people who are, higher and above, but it's also good to have the relationships with people who are on a similar journey to you.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. You know what? I can really relate to that because in like this, I guess, creative field as well, like other people who are, I guess, at the beginning of their journey or like early in the journey can share a lot of the same experiences you have live in real time, and I guess you're both kind
Yeah,
of helping each other up, whereas maybe it might seem a bit difficult for someone who's further along in their journey. They might be able to relate in some ways, but they might not be able to come up with you at the same time. So I definitely see the value in that. But yeah, books as well, books being a good resource. I mean, it's something I always hear my mom say to me and my sister, and it's always like, yeah, well, the internet's there, but I guess the way books are synthesized, right?
it could be
Um,
audiobooks.
yeah, yeah. Gonna get bare people on the Audible subscriptions. They're not sponsoring us, by the way. Just anybody listening. Audible aren't sponsoring us, but if you work at Audible and you're listening, holla at me and at Peju as well, because she brought up audiobooks.
Yeah.
um, so coming towards the end of the podcast now, and I've got a couple things that I'm curious about, and I hope you'll be willing to share a bit of insight into this. So obviously, in society, it's no secret that discrimination is obviously still rife and is no stranger in the business world or industry. in terms of securing funding, securing loans, business, even from clients or from intermediaries, and especially yourself as a black woman. There's a lot of potential discrimination that you could face, and I'm curious to learn if there have been any challenges that you feel that you've had to overcome, um, as a result of being a black woman, and how you have overcome them. Because I'm sure that would be quite that could be quite helpful or valuable for somebody listening, or people who are unaware completely could be given a bit of insight into what that's like.
I think for me personally, I haven't had any experiences business wise that I can share, but I have had in the corporate world, being represented a certain way, or I've been bullied at work. I've been, there's been a lot of incidents, and I worked in working in the corporate industry can be quite tough. And also being someone who's very outspoken, it can be a challenge. So I think for me, it's hard. It's a hard one. I'm glad I'm out of that ghetto, but I do know that a lot of my sisters are still in there. So how do we navigate this? It's something that we're constantly fighting, something that we're constantly trying to. It's a hard one.
Do you think the answer is for do you think the answer is for us to create our own industries? Do you think that's the answer, or do you think there's still a way we can carve out one in a predominantly like white Western world? I'm curious to know what you think.
I don't think that's the answer, because the key thing is that we still need to be seen as equal. We still need to be seen for what we can do and who we really are. And we constantly, there's a glass ceiling for us, whether we like to believe it or not. And, you would probably have to work 10 times harder to prove that you need to be there, or you need to have a seat at the table, than your Caucasian counterpart. And that's not okay. And so it's not about creating our own industry. No, it's one world, and we still need to be seen as equal to everybody and be valued for who we really are and what we bring to the table. We shouldn't have to continue to fight. And I do feel like it's very important for more of us to have seats at these high top tables, so we can be making changes from the top down. And I also feel like we need to support our own more. It's very, very important for us to do that, because we are the minority. And so we really do need to support more of ourselves, and, treat ourselves better and do better for ourselves. But, it's a long journey, but I am very, very hopeful that things are going to change, that things are starting to change slowly, but, we're getting there. I mean, the other day I was having a conversation about the fact that in the beauty industry, as a makeup artist, as a hairstylist, I've been trained. I know how to do all types of hair and all skin types. But you have, white makeup artists or hairstylists in the fashion industry who cannot do Black people's hair or makeup. It should be a standard.
It should be standard. It should be standard.
Standard, exactly. You have Black models, but you don't have people that know how to do their hair or makeup. Like, it's unacceptable. Wow. So these are the type of things that need to change.
Yeah, that is a shocker, to be fair. If you've got people that are actually, you've got Black people in the industry, but you can't actually do the work on them, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
pretty bad. Yeah. Sorry, you were gonna say something else, I think.
No.
Yeah. I think with the support in our own, I feel like while it's not probably where we want it to be, because I know it's going a little bit of a tangent away from the original question, but I know that one of the things that disappoints me actually is seeing like how many other I guess how many other cultures have been able to create commerce and like bricks and mortar in the country in less time than we've been here as a race of people. Like there should definitely be more like Nigerian corner shops here because there's so many of us here, and like there's not that much infrastructural business in the UK like as
Do you
that
know?
reflects how many of us are here, in my opinion, anyway.
Do you know that the hair shops that sell black hair and black hair products are owned by Asians?
Yeah, like
The
Pax's
shops
one,
that
for
sell
example.
the shops that sell Nigerian food, African food are owned by Asians. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Mm,
Like it's crazy to me.
it's
Like
mad.
I completely agree that we definitely need to do more, need to do better, and also support our own. Like I'm all the way here for supporting Black businesses, all the way
100.
here. But I
Mm,
also think it's very important that Black businesses also support their customers, i.e., treat them right.
yeah, of course. Of
So,
course.
customer service is something that we really need to work on in our culture, to be very honest with you. But, you know, that still shouldn't deter us from supporting our own people, because there are still people out there who deliver excellent service and do a great job. But it's also important for us to try and open doors for other people. If you've been able to get through to this point, don't feel like by pulling up another person is pulling you down. The more of us
Mm,
that can get through these doors, the better, because that way we can at least start breaking down these walls and breaking down these barriers. But I
mm,
feel like we see ourselves a lot as competition, and we shouldn't be seeing ourselves as competition. Actually, we're in this together, trying to create
yeah.
something better for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you do see that because uh, you're probably aware of it. You know, the Black Pound Day initiative um by Swiss from So Solid. Shout out to him. Shout out to that initiative. It got me on a few companies like that I just wasn't aware of, like clothing
Yeah.
brands specifically. When I'm using Uber Eats now as well, I make a conscious effort to try and get from Tasty or another African um, food joint as well. But yeah, I think the awareness of it has definitely increased, and I think they even posted something a few months ago where they said that in the time since the pandemic and when they launched, because I think they launched off the back of what happened to George Floyd in America,
Yeah.
and when Black Lives Matter was at the top of the conversation in mainstream media, I think they launched at that time, and they said from 2020 to 2021, the business owners that had launched on their platform, I think they'd said they'd seen their revenues double
Oh
in the year
wow.
from 2020 to the end of 2021. And obviously, one of the big things about change and revolution is that it's generally comes in the form of who's got the
Money.
money.
Yep,
And so,
absolutely. Money
if
talks.
look at yeah, and if you're looking at it from that lens, then maybe things are slowly improving. But yeah, definitely, it's definitely a noticeable thing that I think in our community specifically um, could be a lot better. But yeah, hopefully we're on the journey towards that happening. Um, I know you mentioned as well quickly that about customer service being a thing. Do you believe in that saying that the customer is always right? And if not, what do you think the saying should actually be? What is the nuance there?
I don't believe the customer is always right. Honestly, I think like some customers are actually mad. But but as a customer and as a
Yeah.
business owner, I think the key thing should be, how do I create the best solution for this customer as well as my business? So,
Yeah.
yeah, because you might not even want this person as a customer because they might have shown their ass, but you don't want this person tarnishing your brand. You don't want this person causing you to lose other valuable customers because they had an experience with you, even though they were not right. So how do I try to adapt or adjust or accommodate this situation? Or, like, how can I sort this out in the best way possible and
Yeah.
ensure that it doesn't affect my bottom line? you know we also understand that we all have different perspectives, and this person might see things a certain way. You might not necessarily agree with it, but some people are, in their own eyes, they're right in their own eyes. I'm not going to argue with you about that, but how do I find a solution? I'm all about finding a solution, but I also think it's very important to also be empathetic. Put yourself in that customer's shoes. If I was encountering a business, and how would I want to be treated? How would I want them to respond to me in that manner, in that instance? How would I want them to, deal with this situation if I was a customer? Because we also interact with businesses ourselves all the time. So
True, yeah.
it's just, I think it's about changing your mindset and your perspective. It's not a pass, because people take things very personally. Like, no one's attacking you personally, because your business is like your baby, in it. So they take it very personally, ready to fight. No, it's not an attack on you as a person, but understand that this is a customer, and how do we treat this situation in the best way we can?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Is that something you had to learn when you first started? Because obviously you were doing everything pretty bootstrapped at the
Funny
beginning, or
enough.
was it? So you always knew in your heart that actually this, however, whatever business result happens, this isn't personal against me.
So the truth of the matter is, I was raised in a customer service era, working in retail and things like that. Customer was always right in them instances, even when I thought,
Yeah.
like, you're crazy.
Yeah, they're moving
But
mad, yeah.
yeah, but I was taught to, okay, how do we get the best outcome? I really feel that work experience definitely helps a lot before jumping into business. But also, for the longest time, I was not the face of my business. So until the day that I'm delivering the service, you won't know that it's me.
I
So
see.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't really take things too personally. But to be honest with you, there are times where, even till today, I have to really catch myself. Maybe I've had a bad experience with a client and it's rubbed me off the wrong way. It can affect my whole day. And I have to remind myself that, listen, this is not personal. Sometimes I think, is this person trying to make me feel like I'm not good at what I do? But then, the next customer is the loveliest person, and I'm like, nah, it's not me, it's them. But it's okay. everybody has whatever it is that they're dealing with. I'm not going to allow this person to affect me. But I think, to be fair, it's like a constant like, you have to actively remind yourself and actively try your best to not, like, take it personal or feel attacked, because, like I said, your business is like your baby, so it is personal, but we have to try to remain as professional as we can.
Yeah, because I guess if you do take it personally, then it affects your judgment and then the decisions you make, the actions you take, and
The
then
things you say, like, sometimes I just won't respond to, like, an email for like a day. Let me cool off. Or if it's like a face-to-face thing, I just need 1 minute. Let me just gather myself,
yeah,
and then I'll respond to you. Like, yeah.
just go to the just say I'm gonna go to the toilet, shout at the mirror a little bit, kick the door, and then just be like, wash your face off, and then go back in and be like,
Bruh,
right,
whatever I can do.
yeah. No, definitely. I hear that. I hear that. Um, So last couple questions, and I guess the next question I have is about um like hiring people and or contracting people in or bringing people in to work. I guess work on your vision in essence. Um, how do you vet and assess who the right people to work for you are? And can you ever really be sure about the people that you're bringing in?
You can never really be sure. People are gonna be people. Me, I pray. I can't lie. I pray. I pray a lot. Yes, I
Yeah.
don't want the wrong people in my business or around me. So if this person isn't right, God reveal it to me somehow. And sometimes people show themselves.
Mm,
Obviously you go through the whole application interview process. So it actually allows you to whittle down people. And then
of course, yeah.
trials, like, trial run, the same way in corporate organizations, you have probation periods and things like that. Same thing. Like, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think also just understanding that no one is going to be there forever. So, you know,
Yeah.
what's your goal? And how can the time that you're in here help you achieve that? I know that some entrepreneurs take it very personal when people leave their business or their organization. It's not personal. This person is on
Mm,
their own journey. They have their own life to live. They were with you for a season. They played their part, and it's time for the next one.
yeah. Yeah. That's a really big point actually, because I've definitely seen so like some entrepreneurs get really down when people are like leaving, or I've heard stories about like people being heartbroken that certain people have left their company. But I guess it is part of the game, right? It's part of the game.
Life. It's
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so last question for you, Pedro, and it's been a really insightful podcast. Like I've learned a lot of little nuances about business that I'd not really thought about before. So I'm excited to listen back to this when I'm editing so that I can fully cement them in my brain. Um, but one of the things I'm really interested in with all my guests is understanding what their long-term visions are. So in my head and my goals, I guess, before I leave the planet, are to leave like really uh, uh, just to leave bodies of work. So the book being one thing, potentially an album, and potentially like a live action show for the book. Those are the three things that in my lifetime I'd want to leave on the planet as my, long term. Um, I guess that's part of my long term vision. So for you, what are your long term professional and business goals that align with the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Wow. It's a good question. I think for me, it's about people. Um, the impact that I can make in the lives of people. To
Mm,
be remembered as someone who, no matter how small, helps transform somebody's life. You know, the reason why I started my YouTube channel is because I know that a lot of people do have potential in them, but you know, sometimes people don't really know how to bring it out.
mm,
And actually, we all have something inside of us. So all you need is that little push or someone who actually believes in you to help you get to that point. In terms of like my businesses, creating these memories that last forever for these
mm,
people. In terms of beauty, helping women love themselves for who they are and be confident in themselves and in who they are. Um, if you just have one life, and I think for me, it's about how can I do more than just me? Because once I'm gone, what else is there? You know, I want to have deposited in people's lives so that they know you can do this, you can achieve this, you can follow your dreams. It's never too late to start. You know, you can live a very fulfilling life. You can live a full life as well. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Impact. It's a big one. Yeah. I'm sure like a lot of people when they hear entrepreneurs talk, they're like, oh, they're going to say, I want to reach this amount of net worth, or,
I
have a business that.
The
What
truth of
number
the
are you
matter
putting
is,
on it? What number are you putting on it, Peju?
do you know, if I'm going to become really honest with you, I haven't put a number on it. I'll be honest with you, I know these things are going to come. So that's not like, but these things are very fleeting. Like,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily satisfy me. They're going to come because I work hard. But it's like, okay, after this, because you can't take any of this with you to the grave.
Yeah.
So in the same way that I am very big on helping people create lasting memories, I also want to create lasting memories for myself, for my loved ones, for people who encounter me. So like, yeah, the money is going to come. The money is always going to be there. But that's not enough for me. It has to be more than that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that, Peju, and thank you for being on the podcast today. I think, like I said earlier, it's been really insightful. I think for those people who are looking to jump into entrepreneurship, there's a lot of nuggets that they can take from this podcast. And even if they're not trying to be an entrepreneur, just to have that awareness and something that could help them just in general with business and applying some principles in their lives as well. I think there's a lot to take from it. For the people that want to follow your journey as an entrepreneur, or find out about the businesses that you have, you may have a potential customer listening right now. You never know. Where can they find you? Where can they? Yeah, this is just the plug section, basically. So yeah, away you go.
So I know I've spoken about my YouTube channel a bit. It's called Navigating Entrepreneurship on YouTube. My personal Instagram and Twitter are Peju Odanye. And on there as well, you will see the links to all my businesses. So there's Evented Ltd, there's Symmetry Beauty, Symmetry Bridal, Journey to Forever, that's my book. Yeah, follow me, check me out, holler at me. If you have questions, I'm always willing to answer. So yeah.
Sick. There you go, people. You heard it there. Go check all those places out, and I'll put them, if you're listening on YouTube, in the link in the description. On Spotify, it will be somewhere. You'll find it. I'll put it there. Don't worry, Peju. I got you covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for being on the podcast. For everyone listening, thanks again for being on. If you like it, leave the like on YouTube. Do that subscribe thing if you want to see more. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next podcast. Bless.